So what we're going to do is we're going to make a carrot cake, and we're going to cook that for today. So I'm going to add 4 eggs. So with the KitchenAid, I'm going to pull this down. And let this stir a little bit. And stop that. The recipe normally calls for 1 1/4 cup of vegetable oil, but I'm going to substitute with 1 1/4 cup of olive oil. And that's just my personal preference. I'm going to let that stir again. Let that stop. Now the recipe calls for 2 cups of sugar. I don't like a lot of sugar, so I'm only going to do 1 cup instead of 2. And let that stir again. So we'll stop this. I'm going to add in 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. And this is the brand that I use. So that's 1. And then we'll put in a second one. I'll let that stir. So we'll pause this. Now we're going to add in 2 cups of all-purpose flour. Now, I can't show you the entire thing, however, see if we can get that in. Yeah, so this is the kind that I use. You can use any kind of all-purpose flour that you choose. Now, for my preference, I'm going to remove this. I don't always do that to make it easier to get the flour in. Okay. And I'll just reconnect it and start it again. So I'm going to add in 2 teaspoons of baking soda. So 1, 2. I'll add in 2 teaspoons of baking powder. So you can see that. So 1, 2. And I'll let that stir. Add in about a ½ teaspoon of salt. So this is the salt. Let me turn it around so you can see that. So that's the salt. And all I'm going to do is just shake that in. So I'll stop that. It's looking really good. Then I'm going to add in 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon. I love the flavor of cinnamon, so I tend to put a little bit extra. But anyway, it's 1, too. We'll give that a whirl. And so we'll take this out. Okay. So now I'm going to fold in about 3 cups of shredded carrots. And I ground these with the blender. So again, I'm going to take this off and place these in. It makes it easier if I just take that off. Now I'm going to recycle this, and the next thing I'm going to do is put in about a cup of chopped pecans, and with that, I'm going to do it that way, so it means I'm going to put it back into this same container and blend it with the carrots. And it's okay because it's all going to mix in together. But for now, we want that to stir some. So what I'm going to do is put the piece back on. So we're going to just reattach that. Alright. And pull the lever down and get that. So let that blend in for a little bit. I'm just going to remove this for a little bit. And next we're going to add in our pecans. So I'm going to just put those in. I don't like to over blend my pecans. I kind of like a crunch when I'm eating. Okay. So let this stir. So that looks like it's done a nice job of blending in. So we'll just go ahead and remove this. And now what we're going to do is add this to the baking pans. For this, I'm going to use my Nordic Ware baking pans. I like them. They're really sturdy, heavy duty. I'll put a link down below about where you can find these. Particularly, I don't know what the size is off the top of my head, but these are 2 that I use, and I think that these are some of the larger ones that I have. And if memory serves me correctly, really I believe these were about 8 inches. They're not the 9-inch ones. So these are about 8 inches. Again, I'll put the link down below so that you can find those if you're interested in these types of pans. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some oil in the bottom and a little bit of flour that will keep the cake from sticking. First thing is I'm going to use a little bit of grapeseed oil in order to oil my pan. You can see I get this from Trader Joe's. And what I typically do is just put a little bit in each pan. Don't want a whole lot because the goal here is to just add enough oil to prevent the cake from sticking. And what I tend to do is this, which is an old process used by my family, and more specifically my grandmother, when she baked cakes back in the day. So that pan is oiled. You can see I just use my hands, make sure they're sanitized in order to oil not only just the bottom, but to cut the sides. And that's what I do in order to move them around. Okay. So next I put in about a tablespoon of flour for each one of these pans. I say a tablespoon, but that's a wee bit too much. So I put in about this much and do that. I say each pan, but honestly, when I started putting it in, it just seemed like too much. And what I do is I take my hand and just move the flour around like this. And my goal is to try and coat the edges in a circular motion, like that. And do the same thing with this pan. And you'll notice I didn't put an excess of flour because it's not just sitting there. And I think this is good enough to keep it from sticking. And so the next thing I'm going to do is take the cake batter. And I'm only using 2 pans. Prior to replacing them with these pans, I used to use 3, but they weren't as deep. So I'm just going to spread the mixture in between the 2. I've already preheated my oven to 350 degrees. And the goal here is to bake these for about 23 minutes. And actually, I better not say that. Normally, if it's a pan that's not as deep as these, when I had 3 pans, I did put them on for 23 minutes. Because this is a little deeper, I still want my cake to be moist, but more importantly, I want it to be done. So I'm really going to cook these for 30 minutes just to make sure it cooks all the way through at 350 degrees. So we'll take a look at what that looks like in about 30 minutes. Okay, so we'll just put these on the bottom layer of the oven, and then I'll set my timer for 30 minutes. Alright, so that's going. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is show you my quick, easy trick in order to make cream cheese icing while the cake is making. And this is really simple. I use, for this one, this I got from Lidl, I use 2 packs of this. 1 brick, 2 bricks. And this happens to be a third less fat. I'm not into low fat as it relates to the cream cheese. This is all the grocery store had that day. So that's why I'm going to use this. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and put this in. I'm using a blender, that's another thing. So my blender is not special. It's just really a Black & Decker, a Black & Decker blender that we use in order to help with the cooking process. But today I'm going to use it also for my icing because it's going to be a little bit faster than trying to put it in the KitchenAid, which is really what I usually use. But when I'm in a crunch in terms of time, I use this method because it's faster for me. So again, I'm putting in 2. Okay. So we'll just get that in like that. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is add in some powdered sugar. Mine's not special. More specifically, it's the Food Lion brand. And so for this, my goal here is to add in some confectioner's sugar. Now this is the 10 times, so the 10x. The other thing is I don't like a whole lot of sugary icing, so I just want to add a little bit in order to keep it from being boring, but yet just a little bit sweet, but not too sweet. So typically I'd say I add in about a cup of icing with the cream cheese because my goal here is to have more of the cream cheese flavor. Next thing I'm going to do is add in a little bit of almond milk. And I use the original kind for this. And I'm just going to put in a little bit. I don't want a whole lot. I'd say probably about a 1/4 cup. And the next thing I'm going to do is put the lid on and blend this. So I'll close it and I'm going to just pulse until it's the consistency that I desire. It's looking okay, but we want it to make sure it has a nice creamy consistency. So that's it with what I just did. The consistency looks pretty good, and once the cake is done, we're going to icing it up. In this particular case, I'm just going to get some of this from off of here, but once I do this one last time, I'm content. Flavor's pretty good, so I'm satisfied. we're just going to put that on again. And there you have it. So once the cake's done, we'll put the icing on after it cools off. When the cake is done, I tend to let it cool off for about 30 minutes, ice in the cake, and take it from there. So the cake should be ready, and what we're going to do is lift the cake pans out of the oven. Let's see, they look really good. They certainly smell wonderful. So there's the first one. Okay. And here's the second one. So those both look great. I'm going to let those cool, and when I come back, we'll ice in it and be prepared to put it in the cake plate. So the cake has finished cooling off, and what I'm going to do is prepare to put icing on it. Basically, I try to figure out which of the two has the flattest sides and put the rounder one on top. Actually, this one seems rounder on top, so I'm going to put this one on the top, and this one doesn't seem as round. And what I normally do is this, in order to loosen the edges of the cake. Alright. Second thing I like to do is take this and turn the cake upside down, and it should fall out, especially knowing that I put flour on it, a little bit of oil. That looks really perfect. And I'm going to use some of the batter, sorry, not batter, the icing that I made in the blender. Again, that was my quick, easy fix. So I like to keep things really simple and just icing it just like this. And even though we don't want too much icing, my family does like to have a good amount between the layers of the cake. And so that's what we do. Okay. Now we're going to lift the top part of the cake out. There it is. It's looking really good. That didn't take much effort at all. I'm just going to slide it across. Remember, you're letting your cake cool so that it doesn't fall off the extra layer you have here. And normally I'll do something like this. And just work the icing around. And so what I'm doing is finish icing it all the way around. Some people stop here or something similar, but I'm going to put icing all the way around it. So I'll be back once I'm done. And there you have it. There's the perfectly made carrot cake. Now, what I'm going to do is cut on the inside so you can see what that looks like. That's going to be super exciting. Okay, so we're going to cut a piece so you can see what that looks like. And let's look at that. Looks nice, and I get to see the pecans in the middle of it. So look at that, nice and flaky. And take off a little piece of that. It's just so moist. You can just look at it and tell. It's so moist it's falling apart. I can't grab anything. That is so delicious. So, try the recipe out for yourself and tell me what you think. Thanks for watching.